A very good morning to all. I, Dr. Namrata Yadvanshi, Assistant Professor in Department of Physics, UIT, RGPV, Bhopal, feel honored to welcome you all. I would like to express my warmest welcome to all the dignitaries, participants, and faculty members. Now, I will like to call Professor Purnima Swarup Khare Ma'am, Director, School of Nanotechnology, UTD RGPV Bhopal, and Head of the Department of Physics, UIT RGPV Bhopal, and the mentor of this national level webcast quiz for welcoming us all.
Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Sunil Kumarji, today's expert Dr. Anurag Srivastavaji, TKIP Coordinator Dr. S.C. Chaube sir, all the participants, colleagues, and the organizers of this event. I welcome you all in this webcast quiz on nanotechnology. RGPV is one of the premier institutions active in the field of nanotechnology in Central Indian region. Realizing the importance of nanoscience in the world of technology, we feel our responsibility for popularizing and development of nanotechnology in this region. And with this objective, we are organizing Please unmute a person who's okay. So we are with this object, we are organizing large number of activities related to nanoscience and technology, and getting overwhelming response not only from the students, researchers, but many of faculties are participating in this. And this today's national level quiz and webcast is a further step in this our initiative. The title webcast is used here to describe webcast word is used because we are going to describe the importance of nanotechnology in the field of electronics. The audience here is quite much interested and knowledgeable about nanoscience and nanotechnology. People here are also very much aware and knowledgeable about the electronics. The purpose of this subject or cast is just to describe the importance and how the nanotechnology can play an important role in the field of nanoelectronics. It is just like casting a person in a role in a film or in a play. So cast word is there, and in this webcast we will describe nanotechnology in relation to the nanoelectronics. We will also give an overview of the present scenario on nanoelectronics and industry, the job profiles existing in this field, and also the career prospects in this field. So we are highly grateful to the dignitaries, especially VC sir, Anurag sir, and Chaube sir, for giving us time from their busy schedule and blessing us in our this innovative initiative. I look forward to seek more of the guidance to actively involved in this field, and I'm really grateful to all and welcome and expecting that this event will be successfully organized. Thank you so much to all.
Thank you, ma'am, for those kind words and also enlightening us about this webcast quiz. As we all are aware that this webcast quiz is being conducted under the banner of TechCube 3, I would like to call Professor S.G. Chaube sir, TechCube 3 coordinator, to share a few words about TechCube 3 and this quiz.
Respected Professor Sunil Kumar, Honorable Vice Chancellor, RGPV, Expert of the Day, Dr. Anurag Srivastava, and Head of Department of Nanotechnology, Dr. Purnima Swarup Khare, and all her team associated with this event. Nanotechnology is an emerging area, and the initiative which the department has taken, it is very an effective way of disseminating the about nanotechnology to all students, faculty, and research scholars. And it is not confined to the one department. In my perception, this is equally important for the mechanical engineering, civil electric engineering, wherever the materials are involved. This nanotechnology is equally important for all such research scholars. And I have observed that many IITs and the faculty from the physics department or from electrical department, they are working actively on this nanotechnology. And this is an opportunity where the nanotechnology and in fact, RGPV has got a full-fledged department of nanotechnology. And while during the peer team visit, NAC peer team visit, they had a word of appreciation about this department. And I'm really very much hopeful that under the able guidance of Honorable Vice Chancellor, this department will add some more resources, and it has got a very, very a large responsibility to display the awareness to all our affiliated institutions. And TechUpsi is really has come up under the guidance of Honorable Vice Chancellor, who has facilitated to all institutions and faculty to organize such programs, which is directly benefiting to our students and faculty. Once again, I wish to extend my heartfelt thanks to Professor Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, for giving all kinds of support, and speakers for sparing time for this event, and initiative taken by the Professor Purnima Surupare and her team to organize this event. Once again, thank you very much. Thanks. Over to you, Namrata.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for those humble and inspiring words. Next, whom I am about to call is someone to whom I feel incredibly small even to address his name. So without any further delay, I will request the Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, of RGPV, Professor Sunil Kumar, sir, to please share his words and bless us all with the wisdom.
Professor Purnima Khare ji, today's speaker Anurag ji, SC Chaube ji, coordinator of this particular program, Namrata ji, and all the participants in this particular program. On behalf of RGPV and Technical Education Quality Improvement Program, I welcome you all in this webcast program. Nanotechnology is a very important department of RGPV, and I see a lot more strength and a lot more opportunity in this particular department. As you all are aware that everybody tries that whatever is going on, that should be taken care by the lowest possible substance or material and least possible energy. So the concept of nano material is like that, the energy consumption should be minimized. So again, what I'm feeling that a lot more is to be done in this particular field, and we have to see that this is an interdisciplinary department, so this should be developed in this way. In educational policy, again, there is a lot of talk of interdisciplinary nature of each and every problem. So here we have to see that in what way this particular department can interact with every other department. And as far as this particular program is concerned, I hope that under the able leadership of Dr. Purnima Khare, she fulfills the objective of this particular program. I also welcome and extend my best wishes to the chief speaker, Professor Anurag ji. And as far as the TechUp is concerned, TechUp is fulfilling its objective by providing opportunities to each and every department. And we are encouraging each and every faculty member to participate and contribute in this technical educational quality improvement program. And I am very happy to see that nanotechnology department has taken this initiative, and they are organizing this particular program in this tough time. And in future, again, we would like to have many more activities from nanotechnology department. So again, I extend my heartfelt best wishes to each and everyone who has been involved in this particular program. Thank you very much. Over to Dr. Namrata ji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your precious time and those inspiring words, and for sharing your views about this webcast quiz. Moving ahead in our day, next I would like to call Professor Anurag Srivastav sir for his expert talk on materials and nanoscale applications to environmental pollution. But before calling him, I would like to give a brief of Professor Anurag Srivastav sir. He has joined IIITM as assistant professor in October 2006, became associate professor in June 2010, and professor in February 2019, having multi-dimensional experience in both research and development activities. Earlier to IIITM, he worked as a faculty in GG University, Bilaspur, Chhattisgarh. He completed a mega project of Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, Government of India. He has postdoctoral experience in India and abroad. He got Excellence Award in E-Governments by MP government in 2009. He has good networking with scientists in India and abroad and memberships of allied IT communities and societies. Now, finally, I call Professor Anurag Srivastav sir to give his expert talk.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Namrata, for introducing me. And at the outset, let me thank the organizer, especially the RGPV in general, the Vice Chancellor of RGPV, Professor Sunil Kumar ji, Professor Purnima ji. I know her very well since long, and we have been associated through the nano work, of course. And Gagan has now again connected me with the RGPV. So thank you, Gagan. And rightly said by Professor Chaube, the director of this TQ program, that how this nanotechnology is going to be helpful in different sectors. And the same thing I think said by Professor Sunil Kumar as well, that how this particular area is going to help in different disciplines. And the current scenario, especially in the current pandemic, the nanotechnology is going to play a very, very vital role. We all know that, the virus corona is, the size of that is around 100 nanometer. And the technologies which are available to protect that is not sufficient enough. Everybody knows. The masks we are using, they have the pore size of 300 nanometer. So whether this particular mask is able to, protect us from the corona or not, there are many such questions, and for that, I think rightly said during the small speech by Professor Sunil Kumar and in fact Professor Chaube as well as Professor Purnima, that there is a need of working on a variety of materials as well as devices at nanoscale. And obviously, when Professor Sunil Kumar was talking about the energy consumption should be minimum, right? And so we all physicists normally believe that whenever we talk about energy, we talk about the lowest energy of state. And lowest energy of state normally describes the stable state, right? And we can talk only about any particular application of this material when we talk about the stability of the material. So stability is very, very important concern so that we can exploit the property of that particular material for a variety of applications. So thank you once again for inviting me. And let me just share the today's talk. Gagan, can I start now the presentation? Let me share my presentation to all of you. Just wait for 1 or 2 minutes. I think it's visible now. Can you see this presentation? Gagan or Namrata, am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Very good. Okay. So because day before yesterday when Gagan called me, and he said that, sir, we want that you to be there. And it's a quiz competition and we want expert lecture. And initially he gave me 15 minutes of time that you have to speak for about 15 to 20 minutes. then I said 15-20 minutes is not enough to talk about nanoelectronics. And because Purnima ji has already said that the audience here, they are already aware of hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, okay. I thought it's gone, for a moment,
Yeah.
just got stuck. Looking to that, the needs, of the audience, basically, I divided my whole talk into various segments. And the area I'm going to cover is basically starting with the very small thing, which is directly associated with the variety of, the performance parameters of the devices. And it is basically the material. And there are two ways to handle these materials and devices. One method is basically called as, the experimental way of handling the things. Another way is the computationally handling the things. And being a theoretician, I always look the thing in different perspective and do the experiment through the computers. And that's why in this particular presentation, I thought of putting this title of the talk as Materials and Devices Modeling, and what happens to the materials and devices when go at the nano scale, and how the performance as well as the property of the material changes when you are miniaturizing the size of the material or miniaturizing the size of the devices. And then how to exploit the various properties of the material, or because of that changes in the device performance in certain application. And for that, we have taken into consideration one application as a environmental pollution monitoring. And environmental pollution is a very, very big area these days. And whether we talk about the air pollution, we talk about the water pollution, or any kind of surface pollution, earth pollution, noise pollution, many ways we can handle the environmental pollution. It's a very, very big umbrella. Okay, so let me just start with this. Okay, so everybody knows I'm from Gwalior, and these pictures of Gwalior forts and this, palace, Scindia Palace, is not to show you the pictures of these places, but the main important part is that the technology which has been used here. Gagan, yes? PPT clear नहीं दिख रही है? Screen share नहीं हो पा रही from my side. But from my side, I don't think there is any issue. मेरे समझ से तो कोई problem नहीं है. Just ask others, as well, because for few of them, they might face problem because of the bandwidth. But if most of the people are facing the same problem, then I can switch off and switch on. Okay.
It was initially visible, but now we can't see them.
Okay, just hold on, I'll just switch off and switch on.
Okay. Take your time, sir.
हाँ मुझे unmute करो. हाँ you have muted me actually. हाँ.
Actually, we could hear your voice.
But the problem is the host has, not allowing me to, share my screen. Host disabled participant screen share. So he should allow me to share my screen.
Yes, sir. Give me 1 minute. I'll call to Gagan sir regarding same thing.
Look, I'm getting a message, host disabled participant screen sharing. Gagan, are you host?
Everyone
Sir,
is
now you are co-host. You can share your screen.
Okay. Is it visible now?
No, sir, not now. Yes,
Yes.
sir, it is visible now.
Okay. Okay. Someone is, scratching on this, so on the screen. I don't know. The host, please, look into this issue, because someone is putting a scratch on the screen. So it is appearing here on my screen.
It is clear on our screen.
It is clear to you?
Yes, sir, it is clear.
Okay, okay. Anyway, so let us start again once.
Okay.
Okay, let us once again. Okay. So I was here basically to talk about these two pictures. These two pictures are not because just wanted to show that it is the beauty of Gwalior, but because of the material and the architect which has been used here is very, very important. The colors you can see on the upper picture is still alive, and it's more than 500 or 600 years back. And people have used these colors. And it is again because of the nanomaterials they have used, though they were not knowing exactly that these materials were nanomaterials, but they have actually used the nanomaterials, and still, you can see how the beautiful color can be seen even after 600 years. Okay, the triple ITM, of course, it's very important, to talk about our own institute. We are here in triple ITM, and we don't have much to do on physics and chemistry and other material science areas, and because this institute belongs to IT and management, so we have to find out a way to contribute to these areas, especially in IT and management, and that's how we thought of putting ourselves as a the catalyst in accelerating the processes in the IT as well as in management, and how the material scientists can play a very, very important role in accelerating the work or process related to the IT and management. So what areas basically we are working right now, our group is working on is the basically energy devices. We are working on supercapacitor battery, especially on a few nano electronic devices like your single electron devices, variety of materials based, for example, CNT and graphene based transistors. We are also working on organic electronics like molecular junction devices. We are working on interconnects, and especially one area we are looking into while dealing with these CNT and the graphene based transistors and other devices like the air and water pollution sensor. We have also started working on the biosensors, and of course for doing all this, we have to model variety of nanomaterials, starting from elemental materials, elemental semiconductors, or metals to the compound or composite materials. For that, as I said, that we are basically theoreticians, so we should have sufficient infrastructure to work on this. And for that, computational resources are available with us, hardware as well as software. We have a very good repository of the tools available in our center. We have the license tool like Vienna Atomic Simulation Package, Quantum Espresso is the open source tool, Siesta is also open source tool, Gaussian 09, and a variety of other tools which are available, because each tool has its own limitations, right? And that's why while you are dealing with these tools, you should know that what are the limitations and the advantages associated with each and every tool. And this is what the group right now, we have collaborated with a variety of people working in different domains. And we have the people from physics, we have people from chemistry, we have people from computer science, we have people from the electronics especially, and people from especially on the NASA project. and there are people who are on molecular dynamics, different kind of people who are working with me right now, and we are working jointly. And on the bottom, you can see that my students are listed here, and we have 3 postdocs. And recently, Sushmita and this Shan Bhushan has migrated from here. They have joined at different places, and these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 students here, they are still working with me. As I said that my institute is basically IT institute and management institute, and we are located here somewhere, and we have established this laboratory, CNTL lab, and now coming to this, basically the today's business is, as I said, what is the importance of material. I have already talked about that, why materials are so important. And if you talk about the capabilities of existing structures and devices, they all depend on the shape and size of the material, and they open up the various possibilities of new devices. And of course, if they open up the possibility of new devices, of course, variety of applications are possible. For that, if you go back to the history of the material by era, we talk about various stages of Stone Age. We start with the Stone Age, various development took place. We talk about the Bronze Age, the various, the material development took place, Iron Age, Middle Age, Industrial Era. And now what we are right now, it is basically the Information Age. And where we mostly talk about one material, which is very, very important material, which is silicon actually. And now people have also thinking about, can we replace silicon with some other material? And everybody has talked about Silicon Valley, but people it's going off. I don't know why. Okay. Gagan, can you see me? The slides?
It's
Hello?
not visible. Hello.
It's not visible?
So slide is not visible. Sir, you can do one thing. You can send your PPT to Gagan sir. You'll open, you will share your slides.
Okay. Okay. This is the only way right now. I don't know why it is switching off and switching on.
I think this is due to a network issue.
Gagan, I'm just sharing the slides to PPT to you, okay? I don't know why it is switching off or switching on. Anyway, let us start once again, and let's see if again the problem will come, and then I will share my PPT.
It is visible now.
It is visible now.
Okay.
It is visible.
Okay. Okay. So I was just talking about the silicon. Silicon has been a very, very important and crucial material in the electronic industry, and everybody knows about this, and that's why people talk about Silicon Valley. And everybody knows that not silicon which has been discovered first, as a the semiconductor material which has revolutionized the world, but basically it was germanium. But people have realized the importance of silicon, and there are many the technical answers for that, why people should prefer silicon and why not germanium. So those who are from the electronics background, and everybody understand very well why people are preferring silicon. But it is basically the property of the material which basically leads to selection of a suitability of some kind of a material, and of course the availability of the material is also very, very important. So for a layman, it's very important that germanium is not easily available in the market in the pure form, but whereas silicon is available. This is one very, very layman answer for why people should prefer silicon. But the technical answers are that the variety of the property of the silicon are responsible for selecting the silicon in the electronic device manufacturing. Like for example, its melting temperature is one, its invoking voltage is another parameter. There are many, the thermal stability of the material is also very, very important. So basically, if you, this is what I have said, that you start with the Stone Age, you move to the Bronze Age, you move to the Iron Age. When you talk about the steel and others, and then right now we have put one bigger umbrella of the material. We call it as a advanced material, or we can call it as a the smart material, or these days we can call it as a the smart material, or the other different names given to this exotic material or something like that. But there are various things which are associated with the engineering part of this material property as well. Like, for example, various efforts have been made in the processing of the material. Various efforts have been made in manipulating the structure of the material. And when you are manipulating the structure of the material, of course, the property can be manipulated. So once you're manipulating the property of the material, of course, the performance of the device can be tuned as per the requirement. So various the materials which are available, like metal, ceramic, polymers, semiconductors, and modern materials, it depends on the needs of the future, and you can categorize in different ways. And I have just listed some of them here, like biodegradable material, nanomaterials, or smart nanomaterials. Just talk about, go back to the history, that does history occur in a straight line? And if you just plot a change versus time graph, then does it look like the straight line? No, actually it is not. So it is basically in steps. So you have to start with the prehistory. The people talk about the spoken language, people talk about the written language, and then there is the development of printing press, and the steam power came into existence. And in the Industrial Revolution came in the last 2 centuries, have seen a series of steps, and we call it the Industrial Revolution. When actually after the steam engine, railways come into picture, automobiles, and people have seen that how computers have been introduced around 70s to 80s, between 70s to 80s, and where the semiconductor materials have played a very, very important role. And so if you talk about the Industrial Revolution, within that Industrial Revolution, there are various revolution categories of revolution. First revolution took place in the steam engine, textile industry, mechanical engineering. Then second revolution from 1840 to 1900, which is basically they located in the Europe. Railways and steel industry flourished a lot. And third revolution, electric engine, heavy chemicals, automobile, consumer durables. And fourth revolution is basically based in Pacific Basin, California and Japan, where the organic chemicals and computers have been developed. And so each industrial revolution marked as a major change, a big change, a big step, you can call it as a, and which has revolutionized or changed social, political, as well as economical, history. So this is not a step function, actually. This has taken a shape of the S-curve, right? So it is basically continuous variation of the development took place. And fifth revolution is basically around 2010, and which is still existing. And when people talk about nanotechnology and molecular manufacturing, and which is located mostly in the developing world, and China, India, Brazil, and other developing countries, or the countries which are moving towards the developed nation, right? Mostly focusing on the nanotechnology world, as well as molecular manufacturing world. And why 2010 word has been used? Because if you talk about nanotechnology, it is not started from 2010. The history is very, very long back. But specifically, if you talk about the nanomaterials, which has revolutionized the world, actually start from 1973 when people talk about the CNTs, and when you talk about the polarine, and when you talk about the graphene. So graphene has basically revolutionized the world, because it can be considered as a mother of all the nanomaterials, especially the dimensionality of the materials, like the 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension material. So this has not only made the change in the industries, but also it has impacted a lot on the society. That's why you can see it is not again following the step function, but rather it is following a S function. So molecular manufacturing has again changed this complete world, and you can see in this particular graph a lot of societal impacts can be seen when people have moved from simple solid materials to the molecular electronic molecular manufacturing revolution. So, so after this computers, when people were mostly interested in the solid state materials, now people have moved in the molecular materials, or you can say the organic polymers and all that, and people have seen the changes in the nanotechnology world even, and that's what they can call it as a next big step in this, and that has impacted a lot on this. Just someone is putting the scratch on the screen. I don't know who is doing that. Anyway, so what is important here is basically that why this nano world is so fascinating, why it is so important. Is basically that the size matters, as I said, and the shape. Two things are very, very important. But the most important part here is basically how many atoms are lying at the surface. The surface becomes very, very important, and that's how you classify the material from bulk to nanomaterial. In the bulk material, you don't find many atoms on the surface, and that's why the properties are different. And when you move to the nano dimension, you find most of the atoms are lying at the surface, and that's what this particular slide basically explains you. So that's why I said this dimension is so fascinating. And this picture is not new; everybody knows, and we have restricted ourselves to this dimension 0.1 micro into 0.1 nanometer, right? And that's how most of the electronics people currently they are interested in working in this domain. And of course, they have moved from microelectronics to the nanoelectronics domain. It is again because of the material. So you can see in this picture also those people who have already aware of, who are already gone through the lectures of nanomaterials or nanotechnology. They know this picture very well. And this particular picture basically talks about how the size basically matters a lot. If you just change the size of the material, the complete optical property of the material changes, and it is not only the optical property, but other property of the material can also be changed because of that. And cadmium selenide was a very important material as a quantum dot, which has been recognized as a very good optical material, which has changed the color from green to red just by changing, or red to green, just by changing the size from 1 nanometer to 2 nanometer. And similarly, you can take note of this, that the bulk gold is yellow in color and nano gold red in color. Similarly, because as I said, the many number of atoms are lying at the surface, and that's how they change the behavior of the property of the material. Like for example, in this picture, that you can see the bulk gold has the melting point of about 1064 degrees Celsius, and color is gold. And same material, if you keep changing the size from the bulk to 100 nanometer, it is 1000 degrees Celsius melting temperature goes down, and lambda max reaches 575 nanometer and 521 nanometer. If you just decrease the size 20 nanometer, or if you just keep on decreasing the size, bring it to 1 nanometer, and the melting temperature reaches to 700. So it means that basically the material has become softer, from harder to softer, and the optical property of the material also changes. You can see the color are changing. So this word is not new for the biology people, and for them it's always it was there. But for physics and chemistry people, they always think about or electronic people, they feel that it's a new word because they have changed completely the electronics world. And we don't talk about much on the bacteria and cell, but of course, dealing with these atomic dimension, the nano dimension, we can deal with the sensing of various cells and bacteria as well as viruses. So this picture is also not new, everybody knows, so I'll not focus on this part. But the gist of this is basically nanoscience and nanotechnology are truly interdisciplinary, and various discipline people can work together. So this is whenever you talk about nanotechnology, is mostly dealing with the design and construction of useful technological devices, and size, of course, as I said, is a billionth of meter, and nanoscale devices will be built of small assemblies. Small assemblies of atoms like together, so you can call them in the nano dimension. And when you talk about nanoelectronic components, you talk about normally the transistors basically. So various levels of the transistors you have studied in the electronics courses, like mostly when you are dealing with the FETs, field effect transistors, you are dealing with the quantum dots, or you are dealing with the silicon, you are dealing with the single atom transistors or single electron transistors, or you are dealing with the spin devices. People have moved to the different world now. Spintronic is another very, very important area when you are dealing with the spin of the material, how the spin of the material basically influences the property of the material. And also you can talk about the superlattice arrays and many, many other devices have been emerged. So there is, the motivation for this nanoelectronics world. And because of the various, the limitations you have seen, when you talk about the scaling of the devices, the physics changes from, the quantum to, from classical to nano dimension. It is becoming very, very difficult as soon as you do the nano dimension, especially on 10 to the power minus 10. It's very, very difficult to which science or which physics laws will be useful to talk about the various changes in the material. So what are the other property of the material, how it changes basically? So as I said, you are moving from classical to quantum domain. And when you're dealing with the classical, you're normally believing that it is the era of 1984 or 80s basically, when you are talking about the diffusion of current, right? And when dealing with the bulk material or silicon material, the motion of the electron was random motion, random walk. And as soon as you move the quantum world, we normally is talking about the ballistic transport, right? It means whenever you talk about the ballistic transport, basically it means that the time it takes from moving from one end to another end, or you just take an example of, let us from source to drain, right? Or from one electrode to another electrode, it takes very, very small time, because during that time it also not loses the energy. So when Professor Sunil Gupta was talking about the energy consumption should be minimal, so people need to think about how they have moved from diffusion to the ballistic stage. So the quantum. Now the question is that if you look at this particular picture of the device, basically there are three regions which are very, very important regions. One is the source, another drain. So normally we believe that any device which has this kind of a structure, we believe that source and drain are normally as electrodes which are metallic electrodes, and this active region normally is basically semiconducting material. So what you can do basically, you have in your hand basically you can talk about the manipulation in the morphology of the material, which is at the active region, or you can talk about the change in the material itself. Like for example, if you are using a simple silicon, whether this silicon is in the one dimension silicon, it is a bulk silicon, it is two dimension silicon, it's a simple quantum dot, or what kind of material it is. Or if you can talk about various the layers of different category of material, like for example, you can talk about the N-type semiconductor and P-type semiconductor. You can think about the heterostructure. Variety of materials are the morphology changes are possible. But the biggest question here is basically, as soon as you talk about the the interfaces, the metal and the semiconductor interface, the biggest challenge. The electronic industry people are facing big problem in the the interfaces, because of the change in the work function. As soon as you talk about the change in the work function, lot of Pradeep is requesting to remote control of your screen. Why you are interested to do so? Pradeep is requesting remote control of your screen. I'm doing that. Okay, so as I said, the interface is very, very important, and so one part which is important here is basically between two electrodes. The most important part is not here. Most important part is here. A lot of the heat is generated. So we have to reduce this heat generation here, and that's how the people have thought of using the same material in the electrode as well as the channel region. Okay. So for that, when people move from the bulk to nano dimension, various phenomena occur, and quantum confinement is one of them, and quantum interference is one of them, and many effects come into picture. But I will not go and talk about those basics here. But those who are from the electronic industry, they know very well that when you talk about the chip size, right? And normally we believe if it is a dimension, let's say 3 by 3 centimeter, and when you can, where you can accommodate more than 30,000 billions of transistor in that. So basically, what we are going to think about that a small chip is transistor, the size of the small transistor, and whenever you're dealing with the small size of the transistor, you are basically talking about the length of the channel. So length of the channel becomes very, very important, and that has basically changed from micro dimension to the nano dimension. And because of that, the various, the phenomena which are associated with the micro dimension has changed, and the people who were dealing with the quantum, the classical mechanics, they have started dealing with the, the quantum mechanical things. So you are well aware of this good formula. People have talked about simple Ohm's law. When to talk about the resistivity, they talk about the length of the channel, they talk about the cross-sectional area. This formula is not new. It's very, very old formula. Everybody knows Ohm's law, right? But as soon as you move to the nano dimension, that this law is no more valid. So we have to think about other laws where the length of the channel plays a very, very important role, and the mean free path also plays a very, very important role. So L by lambda plays a very important role. And at the same time, as soon as you move in the quantum dimension, the nano dimension, that this resistance is very, very important, where this Planck's constant and these charge of the electron or charge is also playing a very, very important role. And this normally goes to about 25 kilo ohm. So this is very, very important. So this L by lambda becomes very, very important. That basically leads to you that nano to switching from nano dimension to the classical, the bulk dimension. So as soon as you talk about the size, it basically changes, as I said, it changes the various property of the material. It starts from your physical property, it changes the chemical property, electrical property, mechanical property, optical property. So you can exploit the variety of property of material in variety of applications possible. So various initiatives have been taken by the Indian government as well as the government of US and other places in European countries, and they have called it as the NNI, Nanotechnology Network initiatives, and they have talked about, they have encouraged basically new contribution that were not possible before. This initiative took place around 2000, and they talked about if somebody is working on novel phenomena, somebody is working on manipulating the property of material, and somebody is working on how to exploit this property of material in various device application and like that. So various discipline people, they have started working, but the role of physics and medical science people and the chemistry people becomes very, very important here in this case. And that's how you can see in this particular picture, a lot of technologies have been developed and number of patents have been filed by a variety of people. And then people have thought of how, if you call it as a this particular decade from 2010 to 2020 year vision, you can talk about the various generation of the nanotechnology world, first generation, second generation, third and fourth generation. And what we are right now, we have moved from third generation to the fourth generation, from system, nanosystem, like for example, when we're talking about the guided molecular assembling or 3D networking and new system architecture, robotics or supramolecular, we have moved to mostly on the molecules as device or the component, where we are dealing right now with the single electron devices or quantum dot-based devices, and that has revolutionized. So one very important component, because everybody is from electronics background, they understand mobility is very, very important factor. And whenever you move from the solid material to the these organic materials, or the you normally believe that the mobility directly get affected, and you find a lot of more. And in this particular picture, yes, is very, very important, and everybody knows what Moody has talked about. He himself changed his own law. Initially, he talked about that the number of transistors on a chip will get doubled in every 24 months. And later on, after 10 years, he himself realized that it is not in 24 months. So technology is changing very fast, in 18 months. And a few years back, people have started thinking about whether Moore's law is still valid or not. And and at the same time, people have also thinking about can we replace silicon with some other material? And because people are thinking about increasing the density of chip density. Increase the chip density basically means that many transistors or diodes or the components, electronic components can be accommodated in a simple small chip of 3 by 3 centimeter or 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. So what they have done basically, so they have done the transistor scaling, and scale, when you talk about the scaling, basically you normally talk about how you are increasing the node of the technology node, or you can call it as a channel length basically. So people have moved from 90 nanometer node in 2003 to whatever is right now. They talk about basically below 10 nanometer. So IBM is working on, they talked about the transistor that's below 10 nanometer. So what they have done basically, they started with simple silicon material. They moved with the alloy of silicon and germanium. They worked on playing with the dielectric material, high-K material, or they moved the low-K material. Initially, they were interested in low-K material, and then they have moved to the 65 nanometer technology node. They again manipulated the thing. They went to the 45 nanometer, so in channel length of 20 nanometer length. 32 nanometer node, they worked on 50 nanometer length. So in this particular process, you can see that the miniaturization of the material is not possible anymore. So what other can be done in place of the silicon? The other things can be done by replacing the silicon with the 3-5 compound semiconductor. That was one option when gallium arsenide has been introduced in the market, because the band gap of the gallium arsenide was around 1.4 electron volt. Silicon is 1.1 electron, 1.2 electron volt. People believe that gallium arsenide may replace silicon, but it doesn't happen, because of the thermal stability of the gallium arsenide was not good, and the other property of the gallium arsenide was also not good. People left the idea of the gallium arsenide, and later people believe that can we think of moving to another material like carbon. So carbon, that's that's why when we moved to 2010, when graphene has revolutionized world. Actually, it was discovered in 2004, but it got Nobel Prize in 2010. That's why people put this year as a marking year of graphene, for the graphene. But this carbon electronics is very, very important these days, because the same material in different shapes and different dimensions can play a role of a semiconductor, can play a role of a metal, it can play a role of a insulator. So anything is possible just by playing the size and shape of the carbon material. So people have moved now, the current world is of the carbon electronics. Instead of silicon electronics, they moved from silicon electronics to 3-5 compound semiconductor electronics. Now they have moved the carbon electronics. And now even from carbon electronics, people are moving to the molecular electronics world. Okay, so various technologies have been developed. I'll just move a little bit faster. So one approach was the evolutionary approach when people were thinking about playing with the variety of material, silicon, germanium, or alloys of these material, playing with the morphology of the the channel region basically, and playing with the high-K dielectric or low-K dielectric material, depending upon your performance of the device, whether you are in low power device, developing in the low power devices or high power devices, you are basically selecting the high-K or low-K material, and otherwise variety of properties. But the most important part is here basically when you are moving from the length of the channel or the size of the key is very, very important. So they have reached to the 6 nanometer, below 10 nanometer, but as soon as you reach below 10 nanometer, the complete physics changes, and it's very, very difficult to talk about the physics of that device when you reach this dimension. So what is required at this moment is basically, as soon as you're miniaturizing the size, basically innovation needs to be done at the material level as well as device level. So that's why I said the property of the material also very, very important. You have to keep manipulating the material, and just by manipulating the size of the material, manipulating the morphology of the material, you can talk about the performance of the device. So that's how basically we moved from, what we were having the vacuum tubes around 1940, when, before the, era when we started talking about the semiconductor around 1950, right? Before that, we were mostly the vacuum tubes. And then we moved to other devices, semiconductor-based devices, which were dealing mostly with the microelectronic size, micro size of the channel length. And now what we are currently from 2010 onward, we are mostly dealing with the nano dimension devices as well as nano dimension materials. So now the question comes that nanotechnology development cannot be decided only by the technologists. And when nanotechnologist is a very big umbrella. It can accommodate the people from the physics, people from chemistry, people from biology. In almost most of the discipline, people can be accommodated under this umbrella. So now the question comes again, that straight line which has been projected by the Murray, that it can be considered as wrong, that Murray was not always accurate, because he himself changed. In 1965, he talked about doubling of the transistor in 24 months. Later on, he himself modified his own concept that it could be in 18 months. And now what is happening currently, everybody knows there is an exponential change. So we need to focus more on the fundamentals. And when we need to focus on the fundamentals, basically, we need to focus more on the physics as well as the basic laws of the chemistry of the materials, how the atoms are interacting with each other, what kind of the exchange of energy, what kind of laws are there, how the atoms are joined. I was here, yeah. So basically, what is happening, as I said in the beginning itself, that when you are moving from the bulk dimension to the nano dimension, basically there is a change in the surface to volume ratio. So surface properties changes drastically, and because of that, you are getting changes in the variety of properties of the material, and that's how you can exploit those properties and in the improving in the performance of the devices. This picture is very not new, and everybody who has studied the nanotechnology and nanoscience, they know very well the quantum confinement concept and what happens to basically the energy levels when you move from bulk nanomaterial to the bulk material to the nanoparticle dimension. This is how the picture changes. Another thing which is important here, which basically directly leads to the variety of changes in the property when you talk about the size as well as shape of the material. So this right side picture basically talks about that. If you keep changing the surface area to volume, surface to volume ratio, if you keep changing this, you can see that band gap is changing. And band gap is the very, very important key parameter, which basically directly affects the performance of the device. For that, now as a theoretician, we need to do modeling, and it is not only the modeling which is important. So modeling is basically nothing but it is constructing conceptual framework that describes a particular system for a layman, right? And what you need basically is that when you are dealing with the complex material, right? When you are dealing with the thousands of atoms or many atoms together, this simple model or modeling is not enough. You need to deal with the simulation techniques, and that's how variety of tools need to be worked on. So I'll just move a little bit faster, and right. So whenever you are dealing with the variety of simulation techniques, variety of the material modeling, so you need to have moved from different eras to current era. And right now we are in the fourth paradigm. Normally this current era, which is normally called as the information age, we normally talk about the big data driven sciences. Those from computer science background, they understand very well the big data driven science. It is more related with the artificial intelligence and kind of thing. So the physics and the material science people are no more disconnected with the computer science or information age. They are well connected, and now they have started talking about the how they can talk about dealing with the thousand or billions and thousand or more than thousand of atoms at the same time. But it is all possible with the predictive analytics and clustering of the computers are important, and relationship mining and anomaly detections are possible. But before that, when the theoreticians came into picture, after that modeling concept came into existence, when law of thermodynamics have been introduced, people have moved to the density function theory, and they have moved to molecular dynamics. But this has become, the job has become very easy now when people have introduced the artificial intelligence concept, and they call it as a intelligent machines. They are dealing with this material analysis. So what you have to do, basically, you have to work on processing, you have to work on structure, you have to work on properties, and ultimately you are interested in what? You are interested in the performance of the device. So for that, the computational material science and engineering is very, very important. And where you talk about integration of material information, I stopped using Zoom actually long back. Okay, so integration of material information captured in computational tool when emerging in product performance analysis and manufacturing process simulation. And so you need to have various theories which are associated with the property dealing with the size of the material, basically. So you need to understand whether you are dealing with the bulk scale material, you are dealing with the mesoscale, you are working on the molecular size, or you are dealing with the quantum size of the material. And accordingly, you'll select the theory. So of course, the important, you should have proper guideline, proper the guideline for that. And of course, you need to have a proper hardware machines for that, deal with this. So you can go all together. So experiment and theory all together. And that's how you can call it as a in silico experiment. So these computational experiments are nothing but you can call it as the in silico experiment. So these experiments are the simple experiments, laboratory experiments are a little bit expensive, but whenever you I don't know what is happening. It is going off and on. Anyway, so I'm just, I'll just skip some of the slide. I'll come directly to two things. Yes, right. So let me just talk about the various possible applications. And currently we are interested in clean environment and energy devices. So today's presentation is more on the sensors basically, and how we can detect the various toxic gases or chemicals or the biological presence in the environment. And for that, Zoom is creating a lot of problem. I don't know. It is switching off and switching on. It's having a lot. I don't know why.
Can we contact TQ office who has provided the portal?
Why it is switching off and switching on? Anyway, so basically, as I said, whereas pollutions are there in the market, we can talk about the air pollution, soil pollution, water pollution, noise pollution, radioactive pollution, and so my focus is on basically on the air pollution, and where we are dealing with the variety of toxic gases or chemicals present in the environment. And these two pictures are not new. Everybody knows that people have seen the blackout in 2012. And this left side picture belongs to Delhi. You must remember that the complete blackout in 2012, October and November, and the same situation in the Beijing in 2012, right? And after that, a lot of efforts have been made by the China as well as India, but they have improved a lot. Though I'm not here to praise China, but in this case, the technology part, of course, they have done a very good job. But we have to do a lot many things in improvising the environmental condition. So I'm just bringing you to the pollution map. Where is India? So if you talk about the few reports of India in 2015 and 2016, they talk about the 13 cities of the 20, out of 20 most populous cities in the world. So there are 13 cities from India, and in 2015 and 16, and where let me just talk about this picture, where Gwalior was located here. So I'm from Gwalior, so this picture is very, very important and very alarming situation where you talk about the air quality index. It reaches to 144, and this was WHO report. Later on, people have, in some of the report, they have discarded it, but it was published report. And in 2018, that when the worst in India, and Delhi and Kolkata are at the top, and of course there are other cities of the world, and deaths due to air pollution in the world also, it is very alarming in India, right? And if you see in the world map, India is at the top, in the top 3. So now how these gases basically, toxic gases, they affect various part of the human body. And like, for example, various gases are, as a toxic gases which are present, like H2S is very, very important toxic gas, NOx, and in form of the NO as well as NO2, are very, very important, the pollution, pollutant. And volatile organic compounds are also very important. And ammonia is very, very dangerous. In recently, you have seen the news also that and the carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide also very important, and many other gases are equally important. So you can categorize variety of gases as target gases so that you can detect. So we have categorized them as a toxic gases species and corrosive species gases. Normally, defense people they are more interested in explosive species. They're interested in the methane and hydrocarbons and nitrous compound, and of course, few gases like phosgene and others. In the volcanic activity, also you find various, the gases basically. And then for that, basically you need to have the detectors, or detectors require some kind of material. So I'll not just go into this part of the material because we have already talked about the material, but this picture is very, very important. Those who have understood the carbon materials, why carbon materials are so important. There are variety of electrodes, but 8 electrodes of carbon are very, very important electrodes. When people working on a variety of dimensionalities of the material, they believe that 2-dimensional materials are not possible. They put a question mark on the stability of the 2-dimensional material. But later on, in 2004, when Andrei Zam and Novoselov have done the experiment, they found that this material is stable and variety of beautiful property of the 2-dimensional material, and that's how later on they have realized that graphene can be considered as a mother of other carbon materials like 3-dimensional a material like fluorine or quantum dot, or you can talk about the graphite itself, or the carbon nanotube to fold it in different way. So I'll not talk about this material anymore. Directly come to two part of the material. Like say, for example, as I said, the 2D nanostructures graphene sheet is zero band gap material. Normally people call it as a zero band gap material, or sometimes you can call it as a semi-metallic material. And structure is flat in the structure. And similar material is boron nitride sheet. So whether the zero band gap is advantageous or it is not advantageous. So of course it is not advantageous. Zero band gap material is not good. So you need to analyze the property of the material. So we have found boron nitride is another very good material, which has band gap of around 4.8 electron volt. But this band gap is almost reaches to the insulating stage. And people have then worked on silicene, germanium, phosphorine, and other 2D material. And of course, the structure of the material also plays a very important role. Whether it is a flat structure or it is a buckled or puckered structure. That's how you can decide the property of the material, in different. Let me just come to the sensor part. So what sensor is? Basically, it is a device that detects events or changes in the quantity and provides a corresponding output, generally as an electrical output signal, right? And your own human body also has a lot of components as a sensor. Know very well. So what you are doing when you are doing the sensing, basically, either you are seeing the changes in the mechanical quantities, you are seeing the change in the thermal quantities, you are seeing or observing the change in the optical quantities of electromagnetic changes, or you are observing the changes in the chemical quantities. So if you look at for electronics perspective, basically, you are interested more in the active region. Go back to that same device I talked about. We have got two electrodes, and in between there was a channel region. So we are mostly we are more dealing with the the channel region. So when gas approaches this channel region, what happens basically? It changes the signals, and how the signals can be analyzed basically through the various data processing mechanism that basically talks about the presence of which kind of gas or chemical present in the environment. So this is a simple picture which talks about the same thing. So basically, what you are doing basically, you are manipulating this active region, and as soon as gas molecule reaches this active material, there is a change in the current, right? So you can get the change in the current because of change in the gate voltage, or you can get change in the current because of the presence of any extra molecule of the gas or the chemical near the active region, active material. But now the question is how to decide that the sensor you have developed is good sensor or is a bad sensor. There are a variety of parameters for that. So, but most important parameters are like sensitivity, how much sensitive the surface is, the selectivity. For example, in a particular environment, n number of gases are which this particular material is good sensor or for which gas. So selectivity is another very important, and the stability, the thermal stability of the material, because it decides the lifetime of the device. So other, of course, parameters are equally important, but these parameters are very, very important. And another parameter which is important here is the response time. So how fast it gives the change in the signal. So variety of materials have been proposed by a variety of scientists, like they have started talking about the metal oxide semiconductor, old one. People still work on the metal oxide semiconductor, like mostly oxide. People work on nanocomposite. People are working on the polymer-based sensor, but at present, current industry is mostly focusing on CNT and graphene-based transistor sensors. Now, as a theoretician, what we do basically normally, very first step, as I said, that stability of the material becomes very, very important. Whenever which material you have to use. Let me just take one example of sensing hydrogen fluoride, right? You have to sense this hydrogen fluoride gas, right, by using a simple CNT. And CNT can be manipulated in different forms. Like you can have a simple CNT as a pristine or pure CNT. You can have the functionalized CNT, just making a P-type or N-type CNT, making a functionalized in the form of, like, let's say boron doping or nitrogen doping. And that's how the first thing you do basically, as I said, of course, you make a geometry optimization. And in the geometry optimization, basically, you are minimizing the energy of the system so that you can talk about the stability of the material. And the second thing which is important here, to look at what the band structure of the material. So through the band structure material, normally talk about the band gap of the material, whether it's semiconducting or it is metallic. You verify it to the So ultimately, you are interested more in what? Current voltage. So electronics people, they are not much interested in material. How physics people are working on this? Of course, electronics people are not interested. Electronics people are, or industry is interested in current voltage analysis. So what happens to the current voltage analysis and what happens to the device performance? But to manipulate the performance of the device, basically you need to understand how materials behave. So current voltage characteristics are becoming very, very important. So in the earlier picture, you can see that, the pristine CNT has one characteristic, like for example, this one, this curve belongs to the pristine CNT, current voltage analysis. Anyway, so I'll just, today is disturbing a lot, this Zoom. Okay, another way of looking at how the surface changes, basically the chemistry angle is also very, very important. You can talk about the HOMO-LUMO profiles of that. You can talk about the molecular charge analysis. Basically, molecular charge analysis talks about the spread of the charge, right? How the the charge changes on the atoms, basically, because of the presence of the extra atom as a dopant or as a intruder in the system. So this is basically a picture of the, when you have the boron in the CNT and how the property of the material changes. You can see that, the bands shifted from, the valence band to the conduction. Okay, anyway, so so this is what basically picture is. So molecular population analysis is very, very important, and through that you can also talk about the sensing, and current voltage analysis is very, very important. And another thing which is important here, whenever you are working on the sensors, so you normally talk about the adsorption. So whether there is a chemisorption or it is physisorption. So there are two ways. So normally you see that physisorption, chemisorption, two phenomena. In chemisorption, normally the molecule which is present near to the surface gets stuck to the surface, right? So it is basically chemisorption. When it is separated, right? It is apart from the surface. Normally you believe it is physisorption. Now the question is, which one is advantageous and which one is disadvantageous? Both are advantages as well as disadvantages. The question is where you are going to implement it. For example, if you are interested in to work for a आज Zoom ने बहुत परेशान कर दिया. That's why I think Indian government has said stop using Zoom. Okay, so where I was okay. Okay, so whenever this extra molecule comes near to the surface, basically it changes the band structure, it changes the molecular population, it changes the current voltage analysis. In this particular graph, you can see here that pristine CNT was showing this particular picture. So current as a function of the voltage, right? Yeah, this one. And this as soon as the hydrogen fluoride molecule come near to the surface of C and D, basically there is a drop in the current, you can see easily. So now the question is comes how to analyze this picture. So you see here, so when you are dealing with the lower bias voltage, you see that up to 0.6 volt, there is no change, right? As soon as you go to the higher voltage, you normally see that there is a change. But as soon as you reach above 1.5 volt, right, you normally see there is a drastic change in the current, or there is a drastic drop in the current. And now you can see that anyway, so I don't know why it is happening. So before that, when got interrupted, I talked about the physisorption, chemisorption. I was talking about when you are using a diabetic sensor. So diabetic sensor is one-time usable strip. You are using a single strip, right? When you put blood sample on that, it is simple one-time usable, and that's why it is very expensive, right? One strip costs around 50 to 60 rupees. But for example, if you have to deploy this sensor on the street or on any square, then you cannot keep replacing the strips. In terms of the conduct, you are okay. And in this particular picture, you can see the selectivity, basically, that when you have variety of gases present in the hydrogen fluoride, cyanide, chloride, bromide, sulfide, and sulfide, how this particular device behaves. Now you can easily select. So this particular boron doped CNT is good for what? Similarly, for example, N doped CNT is good for what? This is how you can decide that selectivity of the material. Similarly, this is the work on ammonia sensing by using a diffracted graphene. So we have done the similar experiment. We have calculated the sensitivity of the surface. How you can manipulate the sensitivity of the surface just by calculating the conductance of the device. And this is the work on ammonia as well as NO2 sensing by using the arsenine. And those who are from the electronic industry, they are more interested in this, basically the okay. So anyway, so this is, I think I should stop. Huh? I have said many things, but on sensor part, I have said enough. So you can basically, the idea is basically those who are interested in working on the sensors, of course, you need to keep manipulating the material and look at how the performance of the device can be, changed or improvised. And another key factor is basically whether your device is interested in looking at the intruder as a chemisorption phenomena or as a physisorption phenomena. So this is how you decide that how your basically device will work as a single time usable device or a multiple time or reusable device basically. So the sensors which are good or less expensive. Okay, so I think Gagan, I'm getting bored with this stuff now, and because I mean people are also maybe feeling bored with this because of the switching on and switching off. So I had many things to talk about, maybe some other time, right? And I have said enough on the environmental pollution. I have taken few examples, but the idea was basically to talk about a little bit on how nanoelectronics were getting fascinated, not because of the size of the device, but also because of the size of the material, which plays a very, very important role. And surface modification becomes very, very important whenever you are trying to manipulate the performance of the device. And you can use it as a in the energy sector, in energy devices, or you can talk about as a pollutant sensor. And in many ways, these applications are possible just by keep manipulating the materials. So I think from my side, I have said enough. I had many things to talk about for the students' benefit, but I think this is what the last slides I should say. And I should thank Gagan, I should thank the Purnima ma'am and RGPV in general for giving me this opportunity to speak to you or interact with all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Srivastava. Hello, am I here?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
So, Dr. Srivastava, we are really very grateful to you, and it was really very interesting and elaborate, enlightening presentation by you. Despite of all the hassles in the presentation due to Zoom, we enjoyed the presentation, and I'm sure that the students must have benefited with this talk. And we really feel that we should have many more of your presentations for our students. And thank you so much. And thanks for all the participants for cooperating with us. Thank you so much, Dr. Srivastava. And
Yeah,
also all the organizers who have put in their efforts for making this presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
So thank you, Dr. Srivastava.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Online queue started. Please, participants, go to link and participants in events.
All the participants may start with their quiz. It is time-bound activity.
30 minutes.
Yes, 30 minutes, and the link has been provided to you. If anyone has any problem, can give your message on the chat box. It is 12:35.
Yes, ma'am.
1:05 p.m. will be the closing time of this quiz.
Madam.
Total 25 questions are there in quiz. Each question carrying 4 marks. Only those will get 40% and above will get certificate, e-certificate. And you will get quiz link on chat box.